Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that's honestly a bit wild. We're going to unpack a rapidly evolving threat that goes right after our deepest psychological instinct, trusting exactly what we see. It's the fascinating and frankly kind of alarming world of AI impersonation. Picture this. You're just sitting at your desk, going about a totally normal work day, and bam, you get a sudden video call from your CEO. You pick up, and the face on the screen looks incredibly real. Every expression, every little blink, it perfectly matches the person you know. And it's not just the face. The voice sounds completely authentic too. The tone, the cadence, even the specific way they pause to take a breath, it all feels 100% normal. There's no weird robotic lag, no glitchy artifacts catching your eye. As far as you can tell, you are looking at and listening to your boss. But then they look right at you and say there's an urgent issue. A highly confidential transfer needs approval immediately, or some very sensitive files have to be shared right this second. They really dial up the pressure, making it crystal clear that there is absolutely zero time to wait. So here's the million-dollar question. Would you question it? If you're being totally honest with yourself about how you react under pressure, would you push back? Or would you just comply? Like, let's face it, most of us probably would. Most people wouldn't even hesitate. And that right there is exactly why AI-generated fake video calls are gearing up to become one of the absolute biggest cybersecurity threats of the next decade. Section 1. The perfect digital illusion. So what are we actually dealing with here? It's called deepfake impersonation. Today's AI can generate incredibly realistic human faces, super nuanced facial expressions, precise eye movements, and even live lip synchronization. Now, you might be thinking, oh, I could definitely spot a fake because they always look a bit off. But here's the crucial takeaway from the source material. This technology is improving so incredibly fast, much faster than most people realize. And it's doing it to create live, highly deceptive interactions. Moving on to Section 2, breaking our visual trust. You know, for literally years, seeing was believing. Video calls were the absolute gold standard for digital trust. We trusted remote approvals and virtual interviews because, well, seeing someone's face gave us confidence. But our new reality? Visuals can be programmed. AI is actively exploiting our natural instinct to trust familiar faces and voices, and it's fundamentally breaking that trust model. And look, we need to be really clear about this. This isn't some sci-fi theory. This is happening right now. Fake executives are joining real company meetings. Criminals are successfully posing as lawyers to push through massive financial approvals. You've got fake employees doing remote interviews and entirely AI-generated identities sitting in on highly sensitive business conversations. Organizations all over the world are already reporting real cases where attackers are manipulating these everyday processes. Which brings us to Section 3, the remote work vulnerability. The modern workplace is honestly a perfect storm for this kind of thing. Think about it. We've got employees working from home, globally distributed teams, back-to-back virtual meetings all day long, and hardly any actual face-to-face interaction. It creates the absolute perfect environment for AI impersonation to thrive. Because we're interacting digitally so often, we're basically conditioned to just accept whatever's on the screen. And the faster we work, the less likely we are to hit the brakes and verify something suspicious. Attackers know this, and they perfectly map out this psychology. First, they create sudden urgency, which deliberately triggers an emotional response. And when we're under that kind of pressure, what do? We lean on trust, especially if we see a familiar face. And that pushes us straight into taking action. Attackers are relying completely on this exact psychological sequence. It makes modern cybercrime deeply psychological, super cheap to run, highly scalable, and honestly incredibly effective. Let's look at Section 4, a world without reliable identity. We really need to pause here and ask a pretty uncomfortable question, one that's probably going to define the next decade. What happens to society when digital identity itself becomes completely unreliable? What happens when you literally cannot trust that the digital representation of the person on the screen is actually them? The blast radius on this is massive, and it goes way beyond basic cybersecurity. It threatens the very foundations of how we process evidence in our legal systems. It disrupts major business operations and global finance. It severely impacts media integrity, politics, and ultimately, it puts a huge strain on fundamental human communication itself. Finally, Section 5, defending the future of trust. So, the very first step in defending ourselves is addressing this paradigm shift. We have to let go of that dangerous assumption we've held on to for decades. If I can see someone, they must be real. Society urgently needs to adopt a new mindset. Visual confirmation alone is simply no longer enough to verify an identity. It's just not. In practical terms, this means adopting zero trust protocols. To stop some really severe financial and reputational hits, organizations have to urgently put mandatory verification codes and multi-step approvals in place for anything sensitive. We're talking about building secondary biometric checks, using secure alternative communication channels, and baking rigorous internal authentication procedures right into our daily routines. Now, it is also super important to remember that AI video isn't inherently evil. In fact, it has some incredibly positive applications. We can use it for enhanced education, making things more globally accessible, creating really rich entertainment, and doing real-time translations. It's a remarkably powerful tool that can do a ton of good, as long as we actively prepare for how it can be weaponized. Ultimately, the most crucial takeaway from the source material is this. In the AI era, trust itself is becoming one of the most valuable and vulnerable assets organizations have. Your willingness to adapt and actively protect your organizational trust is what will define your security moving forward. So, let me leave you with this. How will you verify the next urgent video call you receive?